Okay, I am so glad that you're joining me today because we are talking about something that probably no one has ever told you when it comes to emotional eating. And if you feel like you have tried all of the things to stop the pattern and it's still not working, it's probably because you are missing this one key thing. Okay, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. This has to be one of my favorite podcast episodes that I've recorded in a long time, and I'm still buzzing because I got off a coaching over coffee session with Amy, who you're about to hear, and we talked about emotional eating, and we talked about it in a way that she had never heard before. And you're going to hear like the incredible conversation that we had because she is someone who has been struggling with emotional eating for her entire life. And she always thought that there was something wrong with her. And she would try to pray and use willpower and felt like no one understood her. And she had tried all of the things and nothing ever worked. And she was feeling hopeless. So we get on our coaching session, and actually her question was around how to stop eating foods that she know doesn't make her feel good and doesn't benefit her health because she kept being called to them. And as I did my little digging, we really uncovered a major thing that she had never addressed that kept perpetuating this pattern and this habit of emotional eating, of turning to food every time that she was stressed, emotional, anxious, lonely, bored, whatever it might be. And if you feel the same way, if you feel like it's almost this like subconscious automatic pull towards food when you're feeling those strong emotions, you know that it doesn't make you feel good in the long run. Maybe you even get filled with regret and shame and guilt after emotionally eating, but you can't break the pattern, like it keeps happening over and over again, then you are probably missing this thing too. And I don't want to give too much away. This is such a good conversation. I really recommend that you take out a notepad, a pen, take some notes. Amy was taking notes the entire time because there's really, really valuable takeaways from this conversation. So without further ado, let me play this coaching over coffee session. And I want you to listen to it as if I am talking to you, putting my arm around you, walking with you, giving some advice and coaching you personally. All right, let's get into it. All right, Amy. So the question that you had submitted in the application form was, why do I eat things that I know will make me feel bad and won't get me to my goal of being healthy?
Right. So, long story short, my weight has been a battle probably most of my adult life. And honestly, probably started in middle school, high school. I tend to gravitate towards those emotional eating habits when I'm feeling upset or whatever, but I also just tend to crave sweet foods or things that are rich in nature. And those don't always tend to sit on your stomach very well. And I have IBS. So that adds a whole nother component to those issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I still tend to want to eat those things though. Like I'm like, oh, but it's going to be so good. And then I eat it. And honestly, sometimes it's not even all that good. And I'm like, why did I eat this?
Yeah.
Because now I've used calories on something that wasn't really that good and didn't get me the energy I needed or was looking for to
Mm-hmm.
get me through the rest of the day, to get me through whatever I'm trying to work on.
Yeah.
And I crash.
Yes. Okay.
And then I'm hungry again and irritable because now I'm eating more calories.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that is really common. And I actually had a conversation about this with one of my clients inside Food Freedom Academy this week. So
Okay.
what you're probably experiencing right now is this frustration because logically, you know which foods make you feel good. You know which foods feel energizing. And you know that when you eat those foods, you feel really great physically.
Right.
And you can know all of this on a conscious level, but it's almost like there's something subconsciously that is driving you towards those foods that logically you know won't make you feel good. And yes, you can't stop that pattern.
Right. And it's frustrating because I feel like I'm in a vicious cycle that I can't seem to get out of. And, I've done the thing where you count the calories and cut all the carbs and do all the things and lost a ton of weight. I mean, if you saw pictures of me 5, 6 years ago, you wouldn't even recognize me because I was so fit, but I was so kind of like you talked about at one point, so stuck on I can only eat these certain things and I have to eat at prescribed times and I have to do all this exercise that I wound up injuring myself through the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a whole bunch of life happened with spiraling because of the injury, not being able to exercise, then having to do physiotherapy and like all the things that I went back to the pattern of eating all the junk that didn't make me feel good. And I piled all the weight back on times two, it feels like, because I've never been this big
Yeah.
and I don't feel good. And I don't want to not feel good in my body anymore.
Yeah.
I want to learn to eat. Yeah, I need to lose weight. Physically, I need to lose weight health wise.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not the case all the time, but I don't want to do it in such a way that I injure myself physically, mentally, emotionally, like I did last time. I
Yeah.
want it to be sustainable.
Okay. So I want to learn to eat in a way that is sustainable and probably balanced too, right? Like still being able to
Yeah,
enjoy the foods that you love, but also craving those healthier and more nutritious foods.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm not willing to cut things out this time
Hmm. Okay.
in terms of saying these foods are off limit. I've listened to you enough and done this enough now to know that doesn't work. Me cutting all the things out and saying, okay, I'm not going to have the ice cream and I'm not going to have cookies and I'm never going to eat meatloaf and mac and cheese again. Like that's not sustainable.
Hmm.
It gets me more focused on those things. And then when I do finally eat them because I've restricted myself, I overeat.
Yeah. Okay. So really the work that I do is when I first start working with my clients, I act as like a diagnostician. So I really want to diagnose for you what
Okay.
might be happening. And the
Okay.
thing is that kind of like if you imagine a tree, there's a bunch of different roots. So there might not be just one root cause. There might be a few that are playing together. And so we're going to try to kind of unearth as many as we can during our time together. Sounds good?
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So let's start with the very first category that I look at when using my 4-step fuel method, which is fundamental body connection. Okay, so
Okay.
if you had to rate your ability to truly listen to your body, understand its cues, and know like what your body needs at all times on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself?
Probably a 4. I'm not really good at knowing what my cues are. I think sometimes even the times I think I'm hungry, I'm probably not hungry so much as maybe I'm frustrated and looking for an outlet, or maybe I'm even thirsty because I don't drink enough fluids. It's not even that I don't drink enough water. I don't drink enough fluids, period. And
Okay.
I know that's a problem too.
Okay. So, what I'm hearing is having a hard time really knowing what your body is asking you for, and
Mhm.
maybe not being able to distinguish between true physical hunger and emotional hunger. And
Yeah.
so, what can happen is obviously when you're craving some, like it's an emotional need, you're gonna go for those quote unquote comfort foods. And what
Right.
you might think as a craving for those foods might actually be more of a pull towards those foods.
Okay.
There's a difference there. So I'll kind of
Yeah.
explain here. So let's say for me, I've done a lot of work on listening to my body. I can really differentiate what it needs to a point that when you do this work and when you have the right tools, you're actually able to differentiate what you need in terms of the food itself. So like there
Okay.
are times where I'll know I'm craving protein, and that means that I haven't had enough during the day.
Okay.
So that's going to be like a craving where I'm like, yes, I'm really craving this food. I'm really craving like ice cream or whatever it might be. Then on the other side, when we're talking about that pull, what's happening is that when you are feeling any kind of emotion, anger, sadness, stress, anxiety, whatever it might be, your nervous system, which is really in charge of keeping you alive, it's in charge of breathing,
Right.
it's in charge of your limbs, it will perceive negative emotions as a threat. Because how many times
Okay.
have you been told that negative emotions are bad, you shouldn't feel them, right? And also like
Right.
they don't feel comfortable in your body. You kind of want to like run out of your body when you're feeling
Yeah.
those negative
You want
emotions,
to make
right?
them go away.
You want to make them go away. And
Yeah.
has anyone ever taught you how to actually navigate those negative emotions as they come through your body?
No, I am working with a counselor right now because I do have a lot of anxiety issues. So I am working with her, but like, one reason I wanted to do this is like she said, like the food component of my issues is not her specialty.
Mm-hmm.
She has lots of other specialties that she's working with me on, and she's great, but this isn't her wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to give you misinformation because there's enough of that out there already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I leaned toward this and started listening to your podcast because I'm like, I need tools for this piece.
Yes. Okay. So when we're going back to that question of learning how to navigate negative emotions, and I don't love to label them as like positive or negative emotions, because all emotions are is messengers, right? Messengers about something that's going on in your body, in your life. But for this conversation, we'll just call them negative emotions because it's easier.
I've never thought about that though, that they're just messengers. They're not really good or bad in themselves.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's, to think about.
Because what happens when you make an emotion feel good or feel bad, then because most people identify with their emotions, I am sad, I am anxious, I am overwhelmed, then we start to on top of that feel shame because we're
Yeah.
feeling those negative emotions. And then when you feel shame, that's an extra negative emotion on top of this
Right.
cocktail. And again, most people are never taught how to navigate those negative emotions. So
Right.
this is like, it's such an important tool. It's called emotional resilience, emotional tolerance, emotional regulation. And this is actually the third pillar of my fuel method. When you're able to do this, what happens is that imagine like all of the different maladaptive coping mechanisms that people use in life, right? It could be drinking, it could be eating, it could be smoking, it could be over shopping. It could just be bursting out in anger at your partner because you don't know how to deal with all of those emotions. When
Right.
you're able to actually regulate your emotions and self soothe, then you're in control of your emotions instead of your emotions being in control of you. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because that's how I feel a lot of times. It's like there's an unseen force that is like taking control of my body and making me do these things, but
Yes.
it's really me not being able to control that.
Yeah.
And I'm a faith-based person, so I pray, I read my Bible, and I'm like, God, why is this not working for me? But it's because I'm still not able to utilize the right tools to regulate.
Mm-hmm. Because
So,
what you're doing right now is if you imagine an iceberg, you see the top 5% above the water, and then there's
right,
95% going on underneath the water. And
right.
all the tools that you're using is it's attacking the conscious part of your brain, right?
Right.
So the things that you know that you know. So that's where the praying, the willpower, the knowing what you should be doing, that's where it lives at the
Mhm.
5%. The problem is that your subconscious mind, which is what happens underneath the water, which
Mhm.
controls 90 to 95% of your behaviors on a daily basis,
Right.
if you don't have the tools to tap into what's going on underneath the surface, that's really where the frustration lies because you know you want to do better. You know that you want to
Right.
change. You're trying so hard and it feels like nothing works in the long term.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it exactly.
Yeah. So I want to help you understand what is going on underneath the
Okay.
surface. So as we were talking about before, your nervous system, which is it includes your brain stem, your spinal cord, and your nerves, that's really what keeps you alive. And if you go back to millions and millions and millions of years ago when we were just animals and we weren't necessarily able to think, we weren't able to read a Bible, we weren't able to like have those higher consciousness activities in our brain. A lot of it was just based off of survival,
Right.
impulse, and instincts. So
Mhm.
if you're in the jungle and there's a threat, you're being chased by a lion, then your nervous system is going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. So you know when like you
Right.
see a deer in the headlights that's just like frozen
Right. And they
at
just
you,
stop. Yeah.
they're in their freeze response. If you see like a dog, for example, they're most likely going to run. Or if
Mhm.
you have like a lion, they're gonna fight you. So
Right.
you're going to have different responses, and all of them are to keep you alive. Like, that's the sole goal. If you ever look at animals in nature, which I love to do because I think it's just like, it's where we come from. And it's so interesting because you'll realize, like, oh, they don't have jobs. Like, they don't have any
Right.
responsibilities other than to stay alive. So,
Right.
this is like a very primal part of our biology is really just always scanning for threats. And
Mhm.
when we have like those higher consciousness activities like wanting to excel, wanting to achieve that self-actualization, wanting to go for growth, and we look at opportunities, then you're kind of having those two different pieces that are fighting at one another. One is scanning for
Right.
threats, whereas the other one is looking for opportunities. Do you follow me so far?
I do, though. I mean, we have a disagreement on origins, but
Hmm.
that's because I'm coming from a faith-based perspective.
Okay.
Uh, but still, I think about there's a verse in the Bible in the New Testament where Jesus says, "Look at the fields of flowers. Look at the birds of the air. They neither spin nor toil, yet they're taken care of." In other
Hmm.
words, their basics are cared for. So we as humans, because we do have that higher thinking, I think sometimes we let the life we live get us so stressed out that we can't take care of our basics.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what that is kind of saying. I mean, we're coming at it from different aspects, obviously, but like it's still saying the same thing. Like
Hmm.
you get too bogged down in that, and then you can't make a decision because you
Yeah.
do only have those three options because that's what your basic goes to is am I going to flee? Am I going to fight? Or am I just going to be stuck, basically?
Yeah. And if you even think about it, so when your nervous system starts to feel something is threatening, it
Mhm.
is not usually something that's actually putting your life in danger at this point. That's where we
Right. But it
experience
feels like it when your
it
heart
feels
starts
like it. It
racing.
feels like it, right? Because we don't know how to regulate our own nervous systems. So like
Right.
a really good example that I use is you can feel it when your nervous system is activated. It really feels like
Hmm.
someone like threw a slingshot through your entire body. Like
Hmm.
I think of when I open a text that I wasn't expecting to get or I get bad news or anything of the sort. You feel
Right.
it. Your entire energy shifts in your body,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Same could be when you're just like really stressed and you feel that your heart rate is going faster, you feel shaky,
Yep.
you feel like you can't possibly think about anything, but you're also thinking about everything at the same
Right.
time.
With no focus at all.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, once you understand how the nervous system works, then you will also understand that it will do anything in order to feel better
Mhm.
because we want to survive. And so,
Got
all
it.
of these small things, small habits that we start to develop that help that response go down, we start to repeat it. So, let's
Mm.
say in the past, when you would feel that nervous system response and your
Hmm.
body would be activated, you learned that, oh, if I reach for the chocolate bar, if I reach for the bag of chips, it makes me feel better, even if it's just for 2 minutes, even if right after it's done, all the emotions start rushing back, and now you're filled with guilt and shame and just even more negative emotions. That doesn't matter because, at least for the short term, it made you feel better. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense, honestly, because that's my self-soothe, just the
Mm-hmm.
food. Or for me, you hit the nail on the head with shopping.
Yeah.
So I overshop or I overeat. Like,
Yes.
we do
Yeah.
not want to talk about how many lip glosses or shoes that I have because it's enough for probably five people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why. And I don't want to do that either. Like, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
overeat or overshop. I want to be a balanced person. And
Yeah.
I haven't been.
So, to help you understand why that happens is because we can understand in the long term that these habits, they hurt our bank account, they hurt our health,
Mhm.
right? But your nervous system is really just thinking about it's fast moving and it's really
Mhm.
thinking about right now, right? Because when
Right
you're
this
being
second.
chased by a lion, right now, right this second, let's keep you alive. And
Right.
then when we start talking about your prefrontal cortex, which is that part of your brain that can think, that can plan, that can organize, that's where
Right.
your long term thinking starts to come in.
Right.
So
Okay.
think of that part of your brain as like the slower part of your brain. And
Okay.
so when you're in that moment and you're really reactive to your emotions, that's your amygdala. That's your nervous system. That's a conscious, fast part of your body that's saying, do something that's going to make you feel better. And then once
Okay.
that has been calmed down because you've eaten or you shopped, that part has been taken care of. Now your prefrontal cortex is back online and is like, what have we done? Let's think about the long term. And now you're filled with that guilt and that shame and that regret.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So the goal is to learn to catch yourself in the moment and redirect.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That makes total sense because like as an HR consultant, I work with people all the time. So advising other people, getting them to redirect, getting them like, hey, let's get back on course so we don't have to terminate you. Like that makes sense to me because this is what I'm doing. So like I'm terminating myself from that behavior when I redirect to something that's more positive, like
yes,
taking a walk or something.
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense because I keep fighting myself going, why can't I just do this if I just try harder, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like not
And the thing
changing the
is,
route.
how think of like how many years you have been struggling with this, how many Instagram pages, Facebook pages, podcasts, free challenges, like books that you've probably
Diets,
consumed,
food
diets
plan, whatever's.
that
Yeah,
have never taught you this.
never ever. Like even when I was working with my trainer years ago and lost all that weight, like he was a personal trainer. He was a certified chef, so he was able to help me with like good tasting food to eat still, even though it was low calorie. But he still didn't get to the root. Like we still were just addressing symptom kind of stuff.
Yep. That's
Nobody's ever talked about it in this way.
yeah. And do you know the reason why most people don't? talk about this stuff?
They don't know or they don't want us to know.
I would say it's twofold. Most people either don't know or it's so much easier to sell to the symptoms, right?
Mhm.
Because you want the sexy, quick fixes. And so if I
Right.
can tell you that this is going to be fixed in 30 days by eating a certain plan, it's going to be so much easier. Like for me, I knew that when I went into this work and I was really going to deep dive into what was going on underneath the surface, I knew that only a small percentage of people would actually come and work with me,
Right.
knowing how deep this work really is. Now, that has
Yeah.
really evolved because people have seen how effective this is, which is amazing because I think that people are starting to talk about this a lot more. Because the truth is that if you don't address the root causes, you're
Right.
gonna keep spinning your wheels.
Yeah,
And
that's what I don't want. I've been spending long enough.
yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, I will be 49 years old next month.
Hmm.
And probably since I was a teenager, I would say, especially since my late teens, early 20s, there's almost probably not been a single day that goes by that food has not been the forefront of my mind, thinking about next meal, how many calories, what am I going to eat? Am I going to be embarrassed because somebody sees me eat the cheeseburger when I look like maybe I need a salad? Like all of those things. I don't want to think about that anymore.
Yeah.
I've taken a long time to get okay with myself on so many other things that I'm like, you know, screw them. I don't care what they think. I want to feel good and be more active, but I don't want that to look like somebody else tells me what to look like.
Yeah. I totally understand that.
I'm sorry I'm tearing up, but like it is emotional because I've wasted a lot of years trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be, both personally, professionally, physically, whatever. I just want to live my best life. And I don't want to think about what other people think anymore. I just want to be good with me
Yeah.
and nurture me, however that looks. I don't want to spend that kind of time wasting energy anymore. I want to put my energy towards things that matter to me and that are going to be helpful for me to live the life I want to create for myself.
Yeah.
I think I heard you, I don't remember what podcast it was, but one of your podcasts, you said, like, when you're 80 years old and in the rocker, like, do you want to still be like counting calories or letting this guy tell me how many steps to take or whatever? Like, no,
No.
I don't want that.
Yeah. I hear
Yeah.
you. And this is why like every person who joins Food Freedom Academy, which within a few weeks they're like, you never told us that it was about so much more than just food. I'm like,
Right, right.
yes,
Yeah,
because you have to find that out on your own. And it really is like food is really just like a symptom of all of these
yeah,
underlying things that really matter. So
right.
let's talk about some action steps. Sounds good?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds very good.
All right. So today we talked about the importance of emotional regulation, the
Hmm.
importance of being able to tap into what's going on subconsciously in your body, because just trying to work at the conscious level, it doesn't work. It's like a band-aid, and usually it just leaves you feeling frustrated.
Right.
So we talked about that feeling that you get when you get activated. I like to use the word activated because that's exactly what it feels like. So you're going to have different bodily sensations that happen when you go into that sympathetic. So I'm sure you've heard
Right.
sympathetic versus
Yeah.
parasympathetic.
Yeah. I had not until I started working with a chiropractor and they
Okay.
helped me start learning more about that.
Okay, yeah. So
Mhm.
parasympathetic starts with P, so think of it as peace. And then
Right.
sympathetic starts with S, so think of it as stress. So when you're
Okay.
in that sympathetic nervous system response, then you start to feel your heart rate increases, your palms can get sweaty, you can start to feel like
Right.
those signs of anxiety, you can get a stomach ache, you can start to feel nauseous. I know
Yeah.
for me, I just feel like I can't sit still. Like I feel like I just
Yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
doing things. Um,
Right.
or on those days where I'm in that freeze response, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and sometimes I get some morning anxiety for no reason and it feels like I can't do anything. So,
I've
what's
had that
important?
happen.
Yeah. So you feel it. The more you start to be aware of it, the more you start to recognize what does it feel like to be in like a rest and digest mode and what does it feel like to be in a survival mode. And the
Okay.
more that you start to do this, you're going to recognize, okay, right now, for example, I'm in a freeze response. So if I'm noticing that I'm in a freeze response, then to do something that's going to slow me down even more, like deep breathing or journaling, in that moment is probably not the key, right? Because
Right.
when you're in this freeze response, I want to show my body that it's safe to move again. So,
Gotcha.
what I'll
Okay.
start to do is I'll go for a walk, I'll move my body, I'll do the opposite of what my nervous system is telling me to do, which is
Okay.
usually just like stay in your bed and do nothing, right?
Right. Right.
So that's one side of it. Now, the other side of it is when you're in that like on response. And then that's when you have like a rush of energy, you feel agitated, you feel like your
Yeah.
heart rate is racing. So that's when you want to slow it down because you want
Okay.
to remind yourself I am safe. Because when you feel
Right.
that way, you feel like things are unsafe. You feel like there's a
Yeah.
threat. And that's when you tend to turn to food. And so,
Right.
number one is noticing in your body, because most of the time people want to escape their bodies. They're like, I don't want to feel
Right.
this. And then people end up feeling super disconnected from your body. Like you said, you're like at a 4 on 10. So,
Yeah.
and that's not just around food, that's also around the sensations in your
Right.
body. So,
Yeah.
you want to get out of your brain and into your body. And what can be really helpful is like body scan meditations, or even you don't have to do it as a meditation, just start to pick up like, okay, let's say tonight you feel that like stress or that overwhelm or whatever tends to trigger your emotional eating.
Right.
Before, just try to interrupt the pattern for like 2 minutes and
Okay.
scan your body. Okay, where do I feel it in my body? Do I feel it
Like
in?
where I'm feeling the tension or like the
Yes.
angstiness.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So where do I feel it? Do I feel it in my heart? Do I feel it in my shoulders? Do I feel it in my stomach? Where do I feel it? And
Mm-hmm.
also, what does it feel like? You really just want
Okay.
to get curious about what's going on in your body. Okay, it
Okay.
feels like a knot in my stomach, or sometimes for me, I feel in my shoulders. I'm like, I feel like I have knots all over my shoulders. So, what does it feel like? And also, how intense does it feel on a scale from 1 to 10, for example?
Okay.
So,
That's not something I've thought about either. Like I've tried to like feel whatever it is I'm feeling, but I've not thought about the intensity of it. But
mhm.
I mean, that's because I'm like a little baby learning this stuff. So I guess you can't jump all in
You're
and expect to
starting,
be
and
a
that's what
pro.
matters. Yeah. And in my program, I have a full document and a full training on like processing your emotions. And I have a bunch of questions that you can ask yourself around like getting acquainted with the sensations in your body. Because an
Right.
emotion is like just a vibration in your body. And like a wave, it goes up, it peaks, and then
Right.
it goes down,
Goes
right?
down.
No
Yeah.
one feels anxious 24/7. No one feels sad 24/7. But what
Right.
happens with most emotional eaters is you don't let it peak. You start to feel it go up, and you're like, I don't want to feel this way. So before you can let that wave go back down, you're eating already.
Right. It's an escape mechanism.
Absolutely.
I understand now a little bit more why you keep saying, like in your different podcasts, it's not a willpower thing. This is
Hmm.
not about your willpower to not eat the cookies. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, it is. You don't understand. But it's not.
It's not. It's not. And that's one of the things that comes up all the time is like I feel like no matter how I try to explain it, people are still so caught up into thinking that it's about willpower. And it's like
Yeah,
I've been through it, and like I am someone who personally has a lot of willpower in all areas of my life, and
right.
I struggled with binge and emotional eating for years. And I thought the same thing. I'm so disciplined. Why can't I be disciplined with
Right.
food?
Right.
Because, like I said, your nervous system, that subconscious piece of you, is fast thinking. Willpower is slow thinking because
Right.
willpower involves long term thinking.
Right. I have been trying to wrap my head around that as I've started listening to your podcast. I'm like, she just doesn't know me. If I bring home all these cookies and I try to habituate and I do that, like it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And but I'm starting to see that little light now. Like, no, it really is not about the willpower. It's about learning to know myself.
That's spot on. That's literally exactly what my clients say over and over and over again is wow, I am starting to learn who I am and about myself for the first time ever.
Right.
So you nailed it right there. So really when you can start to tap into okay, how does this feel in my body and really reconnect to that, you're going to realize also that these emotions are not going to kill you, right? Because that's
Correct.
another thing is we honestly feel like they're going to kill us, which is why we will do
Right.
anything to not feel them. So I
Right.
remember there was one time a couple of years ago where I had a horrible disappointment and failure in my business. And I remember just like curling up on my bed and feeling physical pain in my body from the disappointment, the feelings of failure, like all of it, the shame. And I remember this voice in my head that just kept saying, what can I do to stop feeling this way? And I started thinking about all the things that I could do. I could eat, I could drink, I could smoke, I could do all these things. And then
Right.
there's that other part of my brain, and I think it's like it's my higher consciousness, my higher self, that just like whispered to me, just sit with it. Just
Mhm.
sit with it and
Mhm.
observe it pass. And usually emotions take about a minute and a half, 90 seconds to reach its peak. And
Right.
then it starts to slowly fade away. And so I noticed I sat in the pain and the discomfort, and then it got better. And I remember, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to clear my head. And I always remember that moment because I remember how physically painful it was for me. And
Mhm.
now I can look back on it and say, if I was able to survive that, right? Like I didn't
Right.
die, I didn't end up feeling injured. It really
Right.
was just this vibration, this wave in your body. Then you can sit with it, you can notice the discomfort, and then you want to bring messages of safety to your body, right? Because it doesn't feel
Right.
safe. So that's why you hear people talk about deep belly breathing all the
Mm.
time. And it's such a cliche, but there's a reason for it. And it's because what deep belly breathing does is it activates your vagus nerve. And your vagus
Okay.
nerve is this massive nerve that runs through your brain and your body, and it
Right.
controls this sensation of alert. And so when you can activate it, if you think about it, when you're getting chased by a lion, you can't be deep belly breathing. So
Right.
what you're really saying is, I am safe. I'm not, this isn't threatening my life. And so you can take those deep belly breaths. Humming does the same thing,
Okay.
chanting. I like to do those somatic practices. I also like using your senses. So this
Okay.
brings you back to the present moment. So, okay, how
Okay.
can I like rub my arms? How can I look around? What do I see? What do I smell? So you can like smell like
Okay.
aromas or perfumes or roses. Even just doing anything that you can do to bring yourself back to the present. Like there was one of my clients who had talked about a technique which I'm forgetting now, but it was like looking for specific objects in the room too. Really what you want to do
Okay.
is you want to bring yourself back to the present moment. And
Right.
when you can practice doing that, you might notice that, okay, I was able to calm my nervous system without needing to rely on the food to distract myself from it.
That makes sense. And I think, I mean, obviously for me, I go to prayer, because my faith does mean a lot to me. But I think I've been disconnected in my prayer in that I'm still not focusing on what I'm trying to do, connecting with myself, connecting with God. I'm still thinking about whatever it is that I'm feeling threatened by.
Yes.
And so in the prayer, I think maybe instead of talking to God and asking, like, take this temptation away or whatever, maybe it's more, God, in this moment, give me peace, give me clarity, help
Hmm.
me focus and just be still before you, like that kind of thing, instead of talking about the thing that's bothering me, because then that just is focusing me on the thing.
Exactly. Spot
That's like
on.
that's like a arm chills on my arm moment.
Did you
Seriously.
just
Like,
get goosebumps?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Like that just says to my spirit that that is exactly a breakthrough that I needed.
So I love that you
Seriously.
got goosebumps because I am very spiritual and goosebumps are a sign that you've just broken through something. It's a sign
Right.
of a truth, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. My
that's
mom would call it
huge.
confirmation. Like
Yes.
in the Christian faith, like we call that confirmation. Like this is something that is affirming to what the Holy Spirit is telling me. Yes, that is it right there. I
Yes.
love that.
Don't you just love Amy? She's awesome. And I hope that you got a lot of value from today's episode. Please, if you know someone who is struggling either with emotional eating or any other maladaptive coping mechanisms like overspending or over drinking or whatever it might be, send them this episode. They're going to know that you care, you're thinking about them, and go out into the world, implement the strategies that I shared with you, with Amy today, and please let me know what came out of it. Send me a message on Instagram at sabrinamangala.com. I love getting DMs from you guys, knowing that you're listening to the podcast, knowing that you're getting a lot of value from it. I mean, I love doing this. I love that I get to sit behind the mic and just talk about things that I could nerd out about for hours. But the fact that it's helping you on top of that means so, so much to me. So thank you. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next week on the Live Unrestricted podcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Mangel Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.